Hello, everyone. Welcome inside the Red Earth Production Studios for this edition of YBMcast, powered by Game 7 Baseball, Game7Baseball.com. Great season coming up just around the corner. We got our winter workout tour working with Game 7 Baseball. We're heading over to Kansas City, going to be checking out Mackinsight's Inside Edge, going to be filming some stuff over there. Looking forward to that. Make sure while you're here, if you want to catch all that information, the stories from there, please hit the subscribe button. Hit that dinger next to it right there, because that's what we do around here. We hit dingers. That will get you all your notifications for upcoming episodes of YBMcast, powered by Game7Baseball.com. So please do that. We appreciate it very much. Special guest on the show today, head coach, Jefferson College, Zac Bone, also head coach of the American Legion program, Festus Post 253. Coach, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you guys very much for having me. I know we've talked about getting this going for a little bit, and I'm glad to be able to jump on, so thank you.
We appreciate you taking the time, and
For sure.
It's always a pleasure talking to gentlemen like yourself, working in the community, working with these young people, and he's joining us via the Prime Sports Midwest call-in link. So let's get right to it. Coach, you got a family tradition of coaching, don't you?
Certainly. We, so my grandfather, Ron Bone, had the Festus American Legion program, along with Ray Abernathy, for 14 years, 1960s and 70s. And then my father, Pat Bone, had it for 21 years from 1991 until 2011. So 21 seasons. And there's certainly, I joke that baseball is the family business, and that, some people, some kids, when they grow up, they get a classic car or a trust fund handed down, and I got an American Legion baseball team. But, it's always been, certainly grew up around the diamond. My grandfather helped out at Jefferson College when he was done with the American Legion program, helped out with Coach Oster. My father was also, Father Pat was actually the first head coach at Webster University history. It's obviously a long tradition of baseball in the area, and certainly proud to be a part of it.
Absolutely. 2011. When did you play? I'm sure you played for the Post down there, I would imagine.
I did. Yeah, I did. So 2001 through 2004, that was right around the time that American Legion Baseball had adopted had pushed the age requirement back, I guess, which allowed essentially anyone who had a spring birthday to play as a college freshman. So I actually played 4 years on the senior program, played a year on the junior team as well. Obviously proud of that, and just, very proud of the program and where it's become, especially in the last, 25 years or so.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, because I had two nephews that played over in Baldwin, and I think,
yeah. Oh yeah.
I think my one nephew, Kyle, played about that same time. And,
okay. Yeah.
He
Certainly
played with Scott Van Slyke at Baldwin.
Yeah. Certainly, you mentioned, the Baldwin Legion and what a tradition. Kenny Eckert was a wonderful man and had that program for so many years. Such good teams. There are still, if you watch, if you talk to enough people that have been around Legion baseball, they'll tell you about a great Zone 4 tournament in 1996 at Baldwin Athletic Association. There was some really good baseball being played in that time. Chesterfield was always really good at the time. Baldwin, and you had, Aaron Jaworski, who later played at the University of Missouri, was on that team. Taylor Twellman, former U.S. national star, was a heck of a baseball player as well. Was obviously a soccer player. So the Festus Baldwin rivalry goes back many, many years.
There's some good stuff in there. I remember watching, and Greg Soib is still, part of that program. Sure. And still working there with that. And because my younger nephew, I think he finished his last year. It was, well, I know my brother-in-law, he coached the junior team, and they won. They
Okay.
still had the regional. I think it was '09. They went to Emporia and won the junior
Yeah.
regional there. So
Sure.
they don't have those anymore, do they?
It's kind of hit or miss a little bit. They have had some in the past. It's been, for a while they were doing somewhat consistently, I want to say for 4 or 5 years, and don't quote me on that exact timeline, but they were doing a pretty good job of having them. Obviously, COVID, changed a lot of things with the cancellation of that 2020 summer. So I think it's been a little hit or miss since then.
Sure.
So this area back here is basically production. They do a lot of the artwork back here. They do the production. So any of that stuff that comes in off of, we'll say, our fanware stores, stuff that comes in off the team stores, a lot of the coaches wear, a lot of the last minute, hey, we got to have it in the next 10 minutes stuff. That's all comes back here. This area is where all the day-to-day stuff that comes in really goes through. The retail store is its own little entity. This is where the real work is done.
I want to, get into a little bit of this. You evidently, the head coach at Jefferson College. The summer, that's where I saw. I'd met you out there. I'd met you a couple times at a PBR event with Mr. Mulder. And,
Sure, absolutely.
Talk to us a little bit about what keeps you into the Legion program, and how do those things work together? That's got to be a pretty difficult schedule coming out of baseball right there and going into that. Your wife must be very helpful.
I was just gonna say, yeah, my wife would certainly attest that it's a lot of baseball. There's no doubt. So, I actually, in 2021, summer of 2021 was. I had completed my first year at Jeffco. I enrolled right into summer baseball. My wife and I actually got married at the end of that summer. And then summer 2022, I had decided I was going to step back from that. Aaron Mayer, longtime assistant for me, both with the American Legion program and also at Jeffco, had taken over in summer of 2022, did a tremendous job, took them to the state tournament. Played extremely well, especially down the stretch. And then Aaron got a full-time job as an assistant at Chowan University in North Carolina. So obviously that commute isn't going to work. So because of that, I was able to, with my wife's blessing, step back in last summer. And it certainly is a lot of baseball. I grew up on the baseball field. I grew up around American Legion baseball. I was a high school coach for 10 years. At Herculaneum High School, and did that along with the Legion program in the summer. So certainly used to, a lengthy baseball season. I think it's something I have a tremendous amount of pride in is the program itself, and just, the consistency, the tradition, things we've been able to keep alive over the years, and what's gotten to be tougher and tougher, quite honestly, to field the best summer baseball program you can. So certainly does take a lot of time, but I'm, very blessed to have a very supporting family and some really good people in the community that want to support us as well.
Let's talk about, American Legion baseball. There's a lot of people that go back and forth about where it's at, what it's doing. I was
Sure.
Happy to call the state championships this past season with STL Sports Productions, and
Sure.
doing the play-by-play. That was a fun 4 days of baseball. It was really high-level baseball. And talk to us a little bit about how is Legion going to continue to grow their product, keeping those kids in those programs? Where do you see it going, Coach?
Well, that's a great question. And honestly, I could probably take up whatever time you have allotted talking about the various mechanisms that have led to some increase and some decrease in the total amount of Legion teams throughout the state, throughout the country, and just the amount of kids that are playing American Legion baseball now as opposed to 4 years ago, as opposed to 10 years ago. But I'll start by saying I thought you guys did a tremendous job at the state tournament. I thought it was very well covered. It's an exciting thing, for the players and coaches and their families as well. With them, with the decision to move the state tournament to start on a Monday, there's not everybody can drive out to Sedalia, Missouri for a Monday through Thursday. So I think it's really important that there's an avenue for them to watch their son play, especially, when you're playing for a state championship. So I thought you guys did a great job with that. Now, to dive into your question, what does it look like? I don't know. I don't know that anyone does. When I started doing this, when I started I was the bat boy for the Festus American Legion team from 1991, essentially until as a player and then as an assistant coach, as a head coach. So summer 2022 was the only year of my life, basically, since I was 5 years old, that I haven't been on the American Legion baseball field. I have a tremendous amount of love and respect for what American Legion baseball means and what it's done, for generations of young men, both in our community and obviously across the country. I think there needs to be an honest conversation amongst the powers that be with it. I'm not just solely talking about American Legion baseball, but the national level, about what they really want the program to be going forward. And I think, the constant refrain has been, we need more teams, we need more teams, we need more teams. I understand that, and I understand that sentiment. Having said that, I also can remember District 13, which we were a part of which we've been a part of for decades. When my father was coaching in the mid-'90s, there were 3 teams in the district. It was Festus, Rock Memorial, and Perryville. And then in 96, House Springs came in, and then they started to add some teams after that. But it hasn't always been the idea that we need to get as many teams as possible. And I think, when you're talking about quality of product, there's always going to be some quantity versus quality trade-off there. And I really think that there's a lot of hard questions American Legion baseball is going to need to answer if it's going to stay relevant over the next few decades.
I think that right there to me is a great point, because if we look at the landscape of club baseball, it's the
Sure.
same thought process. Is it quality over quantity or quantity over quality? What's the process? How many kids are playing ball? Where do they have it? Evidently, you have a unique perspective being a college coach as to that development process and where kids fit. Because when you look at summer baseball, what are you trying to accomplish? Correct? And I think that
Sure.
needs
And
to be
I
the
think,
thought.
yeah,
Go ahead.
absolutely. Sorry, I jumped in and cut you off there. But
Oh, no. You're okay.
no, I think you're absolutely right. I think, from a college perspective, obviously we recruit a ton of kids that play travel, club, summer, whatever, the preferred term is these days. Excuse me. But I think, and certainly there's a ton of good travel baseball programs, both in Missouri and nationally, in the St. Louis area specifically. And I think, to your point, I think the question is, what is the goal of summer baseball? Because, for us, like I said, I was a high school coach for 10 years. I will say, your time as a high school coach, I have a tremendous amount of respect for high school coaches, particularly in our part of the state. I think there's some of the best in the entire Midwest, and a lot of them in the entire country. So, unfortunately, it's just recently that the Missouri State High School Activities Association has really kind of opened it up and let the high school coaches do some coaching before the season starts. So there was always that time limit that we faced as high school coaches. Again, we could do a separate podcast on the issues I have with Misha and how they are, in the
we'll have you back on with
Sure.
we'll have you back on with Coach Perkins and Coach Wilson.
I've got a list, and I'm sure Tony does as well. But the reality is, in the summertime, we always felt like summer baseball was, I'm going to say development based. And I know I tell kids all the time, player development has become such a buzzword. We tell every kid that comes on campus, you're going to go on a visit. Someone's going to tell you we're all about player development when it's a junior college or at a lot of 4-year small schools. And I said, that's awesome. The next thing you should ask them is how. What does that mean? Because otherwise it's just a buzzword. So I think for us, it was always about real development. I think in a lot of instances, players and their parents think that the ultimate goal of playing summer baseball is to get a college scholarship. And I think that that's a fine and worthy goal. Having said that, I think the ultimate goal is really to not only have that opportunity, but to be prepared to be successful once you step on campus. And I think for us in the summer with American Legion Baseball, one of the things that we used to differently is we would practice or play every single day. It was 7 days a week. It wasn't just, hey, we're going to play Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday this week. It's okay, we may play Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday. We're going to practice Monday and Thursday and Saturday and Sunday to go with it. Obviously, there's less travel. There's less of a financial commitment on the Legion side. Solely, if you just take anything out of it except what parents are paying to travel, it's obviously a large, significant difference in cost. So I think our goal was always, let's give players the best experience possible. Let's prepare them the best we can for them to be successful once they get the opportunity to play at the next level. And let's do it in a way that's affordable for families. Now, having said that, I think there can be a number of goals for summer baseball. And I'm not a person who believes that you have to have an end goal to play Major League Baseball if you're going to play summer baseball. My wife coached club volleyball for years and was very, very good at it. And I think one of the things I would always ask is, what's the end goal on that side of it? Obviously, there's not Major League Volleyball, although you can play on Team USA and for a multitude of great amateur programs at the college level. But the question is, they want to get better at volleyball and have fun. And I think if you take that and spin it to the baseball side, I think that's a very worthy goal. Look, I want to get better at baseball. I want to have a great experience. So I think that's a realistic question for families is, what is your end goal with it? I'm obviously a proponent of American Legion Baseball and what it can mean. Having said that, I certainly recognize travel baseball has its place. And there's a lot of teams out there that are doing it really, really well. They're developing kids. They're giving them opportunities. They're getting them the chance to play against competition from all over the country. No one can deny the benefit of that. Now, having said that, I do think, we get back to the quality versus quantity conversation. Quite frankly, I think there are a large group of kids that would be probably better set going and playing for their American Legion team. If you see travel programs pop up every single day all over the place and at different areas and age levels or whatever. So I certainly think travel ball has its place. And for the best players out there, I certainly know that it serves a purpose. I'm obviously grateful for the travel coaches we have in this area. And our ability to access, high-level players. I also think there's a group of kids out there that would benefit from playing for their local Legion program and playing more locally and getting more time, perhaps in their own backyard and developing in preparation just to simply be the best player they can be. And now, to ramble on a little bit more while we're on the subject, I think it's also incumbent on American Legion Baseball to provide a product that is a draw for those kids, because you can't just say, look, no offense to any dads, because my father was a coach and I played for my father, but you can't just say, well, Joe's dad's going to coach a team this summer. We're going to get 10 guys. We're going to play 15 games and call it good, because by that standard, it doesn't make sense for those kids to forego what they would get on the travel side if that's the experience that they're going to get on the Legion side. So there are multiple tangents to go off on this. I won't try to dominate the entire conversation talking about it. But I do think there needs to be a real conversation for American Legion about what exactly we're trying to provide and who exactly we're marketing our product to.
And I think this is the good stuff, because this is great conversation when it comes to this, because this and I've come to understand this and know this a lot more than I did prior. But you're talking about 25, 30 kids in the entire state that should probably go and play at a Lake Point, an East Cobb or something, in a showcase of that magnitude, that have that skill set, that on an elite level. There's a lot of really good baseball players in this state that could benefit from these other types of situations. And I think it's tough, when parents, do they have these conversations, and are people really being realistic with where they're at in their own development?
Well, I am a big believer. I think a lot of people that know me would tell you I'm a big believer in telling you what I feel like is the truth, regardless of whether it's exactly what you want to hear or not. We used to have those conversations all the time. I would have kids in the summer say, I want to go to the University of Missouri. And they said, well, right now you're not good enough to play at the University of Missouri. So let's be realistic about either A, what it's going to take for you to get to that point. See if, one, you feel like you're willing to put in the type of work to get to that point. And two, are you okay with putting in that type of work with no guarantee that it's ever going to pay off for what you say your ultimate goal is? So, and you'd be surprised, man, about how many kids are like, I don't know, maybe I'm not, because I do think it's our responsibility as coaches to be honest with guys, and we do the same thing now at the junior college level. Junior college coaches are in a unique position because you're not only recruiting your incoming class, but you're helping your graduating class get recruited at the 4-year level. So, you talk to coaches on both ends of it. I think you get a really good feel for what guys are looking for. You get a good feel for, what kids' expectations are. And I think you get a better feel for what it takes to be successful at the various levels they wish to play at. So, I think the reality is, man, I think there's a lot of great travel ball coaches, particularly here in the St. Louis area, that are realistic with kids. And I understand, again, that they're providing an avenue for kids to go out and play competitive baseball in the summer. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. And there's a cost associated with those things, certainly.
Yes.
So I think there's nothing wrong with any of that. Like I said, I think on the flip side, again, if American Legion Baseball wants to remain relevant for the better players, I think you need to be able to provide an environment where kids feel like they're getting better, where they feel like they're playing top flight competition, and where they feel like they can get a lot of what the travel baseball can offer in a more local setting. And I think that involves access to good coaches, of which there are many in this area. There are a ton of good American Legion baseball coaches. Kent Getsy, who's the head coach of Washington Legion, is as good a baseball coach as you'll see at any level. So I think, but again, there's only so many programs, there's only so many Legion programs like that, and there are good and bad American Legion coaches. There are good and bad travel ball coaches. There are good and bad college and professional coach all the way up. So I think it's really about what can American Legion Baseball do that makes our product more attractive. It's not about bashing travel baseball or accusing the travel programs of making false promises, because I really don't believe that that's the case. I believe kids have ambition. They see an avenue that they think is going to help them get to their goal, and there's nothing wrong with that. Having said that, I think that, again, the way American Legion Baseball returns to more relevance is by offering a better product ourselves, not by going out and bashing what people are already doing.
Well, and, just in that respect, I loved your team. I watched a lot of your kids win a state championship with Festus High School. I mean, let's just Tyler Bizzle.
Yes,
he was behind the plate for you on that your Festus team.
He was,
and that kid he's fantastic. He's at Missouri S&T, I think, right now, and
he is.
And honestly, he was this close to. He took a fastball at the All-Star game in Busch Stadium, hit it out of the park. It just was foul.
Yeah. Love Tyler, man. What a great kid.
And that's the thing. Here's a young man who is he's a top flight catcher. I mean, that's quality Division II program. He's going there because he wants an engineering degree, and that's the fit for him. And I think those are the things that we don't talk about that much. Correct?
Yeah, so that's a really good point. I think, so to get into, let's start with this. So Tyler is a kid who played travel baseball growing up, played for the Recruits, I believe, out of St. Louis, who's a really good program that Todd Stein runs along with some other guys. And Tyler, comes into this summer. He's already a talented kid. He's obviously a very intelligent kid, very high makeup. He's played for a great high school program and coach in Festus and Coach Montgomery. He's played in a great travel ball baseball program. He's certainly developed and got to that point. Tyler comes in for the summer, plays 1 year for us, has a great year. Obviously, we benefit from that from a team perspective. But, and I think there's always going to be kids who have played travel baseball. And there's a lot of travel programs that don't offer an 18U team. So they may go play for their local Legion team that summer after their senior year. You'll have some kids who play, at the summer after their college freshman year, provided they're young enough, and they've actually changed the rule now where you didn't have to play for the Legion team in high school to be able to play for them after high school. And so I think the question is that what you want the senior program for American Legion Baseball to be? Do you want it to be essentially kids who have graduated high school and they're going to play one summer along with some college freshmen? And if you do, that's fine. But I think American Legion Baseball at the national level needs to be realistic about what that really looks like because, frankly, as a college coach, American Legion Baseball for years, the senior level, AAA level, 19U level, whatever you want to call it, has been the showcase premier level. It's where the American Legion World Series, which is in Shelby, North Carolina, which is a tremendous event, is for the 19U division, the AAA division, the senior division, like I said, whatever you want to call it at this point. Now, having said that, as a college coach, I think the question is, why do I want to go see a summer baseball game in which almost all the players have either graduated high school already or are college freshmen who are either committed to a college program already or maybe just aren't playing at college? There's not a lot of bang for your buck from a recruiting perspective right there. So, and again, that's just me being realistic about what it looks like on this end of it. So I think my push years ago to the powers that be at the national level were, if you want to make American Legion Baseball more attractive to recruiters, you need to really make your focus and your showcases at the younger level, almost what you consider to be the junior Legion level at the freshman sophomore level, because that's when kids, now granted, the NCAA has changed their rules on early commitments and contact and things like that, which have slowed the recruiting process some, and you're not seeing 13-year-olds committing to SEC schools like you were before. Having said that, that identification process starts early, and you're not going to have a whole lot of guys walking out to a summer baseball game knowing that every player on the field is 18 and 19 years old and thinking that they're going to get a lot of bang for their buck from a recruiting standpoint.
I think, on the state level, I've had conversations with the commission, the commissioner. And one of the things that I think is an interesting thought process, and I know that they are working with PBR this year. They're starting to put together a showcase for that scenario. Sure. And I also suggest, I thought, they did the All-Star game at Busch Stadium. It's fantastic. Sure. I love that for those senior kids. But to your point, I think the fantastic thing is if you take and you put together an all-star team at those 15 and 16 levels, put an all-star team together, send them over to Creekside and put them in one of those tournaments, show who are you competing, because if you're going over there and you're looking at some of those teams, that's the kids you're being recruited against. How do you stack up?
There's no doubt.
Right.
There's no doubt. Now, I think the other thing that, probably needs to be looked at, the calendar is a factor. The American Legion Baseball is a postseason, which to me, the postseason is arguably the best part about American Legion Baseball. Agreed. Because I think, there's something special about, players and coaches striving for a goal at the end of the year, similar to how, high school does their playoff system. There's a winner and a loser. If you don't win, that's the end of the year. You're not just playing in a tournament in, I don't know, Chicago and saying, well, hopefully it's our last tournament of the year, so this is the playoffs. And that, again, that's not to demean, any outside Legion programs. But I think it is important because there's one national champion at the end of the year. There's not, 150 teams nationwide that can say they were national champions. There's something really special about that. Having said that, the calendar and when it forces the postseason to start doesn't necessarily lend itself to playing in a ton of those summer events that are outside. I do love that idea. I think having the all-star teams, if you're looking at a recruitable event for a lot of the reasons that I mentioned before, I think what you're trying to do is you're trying to identify those kids, one, at a little bit younger age. I'm not talking about 13, 14-year-old American Legion programs and all-star teams, but I think you are talking about some of those kids that are finished their sophomore and junior year in high school. And I know there's plenty of sophomores and juniors in high school that play American Legion Baseball. I totally understand that. But again, I think if the majority of your team, I will just tell you, the majority of our team last summer, there's only 4 kids that are young enough to come back on that team. at the end of the year. So it's a very old team, and that's a huge number one. That's a huge advantage for us on the field. We're older. Our guys are a little more mature physically, probably emotionally as well. But again, if you're going to go watch, if you're going to watch an underclassman who you've targeted to see in a game where everybody else is either graduated high school or already in college, that's probably going to be a kid that you specifically want to go see. And you're not just out there, bird dogging is the term they used to use for it, where you would just go out and watch games. So I don't think you see quite as much as that. I think that's a question Legion really needs to answer. Now, to get back to what we were talking about earlier, that also goes along the conversation of what they want American Legion baseball to be. Because if you want it to be, just a community-based program where kids get an opportunity to play summer baseball, then I don't think you have to do those things we just talked about. But if you're talking about it being a viable alternative to travel baseball, then I think you have to have some realistic conversations about how you do that, how you make it attractive. Both, first of all, I think you need to make it attractive to the players, because that's first on the list. The coaches, college coaches, professional scouts are always going to go where the players are. So I think number one is, how do you convince kids that American Legion baseball is the right option for their summer, both from a development and the original reason that a lot of travel baseball came about, which is the exposure component of it as well.
I think this is exactly right. And these are the conversations that I think they're having at the state level. But again, it's slow always up. And
sure.
And that becomes what's at issue at a lot of times, in my estimation, is how do you move forward? You can only do so much at the state level without the national level saying, hey, you can't do that, or you can't, because there are rules and there are things in place.
Sure.
But
the 7-inning games were a good start. Well, to your point, the 7-inning games were a good start. It happened nationally. I think that's a good thing for American Legion baseball.
Yeah. When you're talking about development and you're talking about playing baseball for something,
sure.
Why are you? And that's the question, because I've been involved in both. My son got to play some college ball. And that was his goal. And whatever happened from there was whatever happened. Got there, did well, and he was done. So that's, to me, I think, what are your goals being realistic? I loved what you said about that. What are your goals, and what are they realistic? And that's where you have to put yourself in these positions. But when you're talking about Legion baseball, I don't think they've had those conversations for a while as coaches, as groups.
Sure. I would agree, and just like, just like I would tell, to the point you just made there, just like I would tell a player, like, hey, these are your goals. And, I think it's awesome to have unrealistic goals. I really do, provided you're willing to put in the work to make them realistic. And if not, that's just a wish. That's not a goal. So I think we tell kids all the time, like, look, man, maybe you're not good enough to play in the SEC at this point. But, here's X, Y, and Z that you can do that will maybe give you an opportunity to do that. And then it's really on to the player. Are they willing to adapt and make those changes to do that? Now, by the same token, then, okay, if we're talking about the American Legion baseball at the state and national level, what are the goals? Because if the goal is just to simply say, hey, we're going to add 3 or 4 teams a year, and we're going to play an all-star game with seniors and college freshmen. Again, that's not a goal. That's a wish. That's not a realistic avenue to start cutting into the amount of kids who have left Legion baseball to play for club or travel programs. And let me say this, right? It's not just about even all the list of things I mentioned tonight. It's also about the fact that, start with this. Little League baseball is essentially in a similar spot to American Legion baseball. There are fewer teams all over the country than there used to be. For years and years and years in Festus, Missouri, kids would play Twin City Little League. When they got to be 13 or 14, they may play on what was more of a tournament team with kids from around the area than a true travel team. Play on a tournament team for a year or two. They would play for our freshman Legion team. They would play for our junior Legion team. They would play for our senior Legion team. And we had a group of kids who had grown up playing baseball together. That's less and less the case than it used to be. And I think you sacrifice a lot from a team perspective when that's not the case. But, I think when kids have started to play select or travel baseball when they're 6 and 7 years old, it's harder and harder to get those kids when they get to the high school level to say, okay, well, I'm going to give that up now and I'm going to go back and play American Legion baseball. That's more of an individual kid's decision than you're going to have a mass exodus of kids out of the travel ball rankings that come to American Legion baseball. So I think travel baseball starts young enough that kids get into that mindset, they get in that environment. In a lot of cases, they play for and they may change organizations, but in a lot of cases, they play with the same kids, the same age group growing up. And there's a familiarity there. They feel like they're getting better. So travel baseball offers a lot of great things. And because of that, it's hard to pull them away at that point.
There was I've had this thought process for quite some time, and I've made these thoughts known to different people. We actually talked about it a little bit. We spoke with Matt Morgan from Warrensburg, who's just started the Mule Club baseball.
Sure.
And we were talking about some of these things, and I'm bringing it up because I just love the conversation, because I think if you put the conversation out there, it gets started that way, and then people start thinking, can it actually happen? Where is a thought process where clubs, because as you said, it's decisions. What are families doing? Where do they have? And is it maybe possible that clubs start thinking about, how do we help and how do we maybe engage on this level, put together a Legion team, and that working with the communities and the posts and doing the different things, you might have this one team over here. It's elite. It is what it is. And you have other kids that are very good looking for different options and opportunities and putting them into those situations. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's certainly a novel idea. I think, one of the issues is, and this is really, I think, what this makes American Legion baseball more similar to high school baseball than it probably does any other level of baseball. And that's, you can only really have the kids that are in your recruiting base or in your area. And there's some limitations on that, which is something that I think limits, the ability for club teams to kind of do what you just talked about. And that's to have, that's to have a separate arm of the club that maybe deals with American or plays in an American Legion baseball setting. I don't want to, let me say this. I don't want to sound like I'm down on American Legion baseball. I'm certainly not. I love it. I love what it's done for generations of kids in Jefferson County and all over the country. Having said that, like we said at the beginning, I think there need to be some honest conversations about what that really looks like going forward. And quite honestly, you talk about, the junior mules, I believe you called it, which I think is a great idea. Drew Harrell, who helped me for years with the American Legion baseball program, and I had talked. We said, look, let's start it from the ground up. Let's have team, even if they're not American Legion teams. Let's have club teams or tournament teams, I guess would be more of an appropriate description, that are in our program, that grow up playing our way, that do those things. And hopefully they stay in the program. And I will tell you that that is a massive undertaking. That in and of itself is basically a full-time job, which is why I think you see so many guys who run these club baseball programs or club volleyball or club soccer, where that is their full-time job. And that's because there's enough work that it will justify making it a full-time job with the plan and the organization, the structure that goes into it. So I think you're certainly at a disadvantage there. And again, I don't mean to sound like Eeyore here, like the sky is falling. I certainly don't think that's the case. But I do think that, a lot of the things we talked about, the first, foremost, number one thing on the list is playing American Legion baseball has to be attractive to the players that you're targeting. And there's a lot that goes into that. I think it's the type of coaches you're going to get. It's how serious they're taking it, how serious your teammates taking it. Do you feel like you're going to get better playing American Legion baseball? Is that how you want to spend your summer? And I will tell you again, man, we did it a little differently than some. We would practice or play 7 days a week. I felt like we always, even before I was a college coach, I thought I want to run this as close to a college baseball program as we can. I want our guys to get better, and I want them to be prepared where when they step foot on campus, it's not just, well, wait a minute, we don't just play Thursday through Sunday. We play or practice 6 days a week? Yes, that's exactly what it is. So I think, I won't say that has to be the standard for how everyone does it. I certainly don't think that's the case. There's a lot of good programs that don't necessarily do it that way. But having said that, I think that was a draw for a lot of kids. And one of the reasons that we've had a successful program for so many years is it's pretty simple. Like, we were able to keep a lot of the best players in Jefferson County, in Southern Jefferson County, here as opposed to playing club baseball. There's not a secret to that. There are no good teams without good players. So I think we had something that was attractive to some guys who were really talented. They felt like the tradition was there. They knew that the guys that they knew and grew up with the community were playing and getting better and having success. If you can, and my father was a union laborer for 40 years, and he coached American Legion baseball in the summer. He would work from 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. He would show up, take his work boots off, and then they would play or practice for, if it was a doubleheader, 5 or 6 hours. Just what he did. He did it for free for 21 years. There's not a ton of people out there that are going to do that. So I think if you're talking about what's going to make it attractive and accessible to the better players, I think it starts with getting coaches who are invested long term. Again, no disrespect to any dads out there that coach. My father was a coach. I played for him. I both loved and hated it a lot of days, just depending on what it was. But I think there has to be a long-term investment where kids know what they're getting into in the program. You've seen that with Washington, with what Kent's done, Mike Gardner before him. There's a consistency, there's a standard, there's an expectation for the program, and that's where success comes from.
I agree. Just in the thought process that you were talking about with the practicing and the things of that nature, coaches, we just spent a clinic with some of the best coaches around here. Is Coach Horn, Coach Perkins, Coach Canavan. They all talked about, I'd rather see the kids practice more than they play.
Sure.
Talking about development and things like that. And that's the schedule, the Legion baseball schedule. You're talking about sometimes 40 games in 60 days, 45 games
Sure.
in 60 days. So you're playing more of a collegiate type schedule. You're playing more of that thought process. And I think there's some things some reality checks to some of the kids when we talk about 14U going into high school, and all of a sudden
Sure.
it's practice every day and it's freshman ball.
yeah.
And the coach
No
is
doubt.
like, no, this is what we do, and it's like,
Sure.
And the same is when you're talking about some of these kids that are coming from maybe some of the club programs that haven't dealt with that, coming to as a freshman into a collegiate program, and are a little shocked at what they have to deal with.
Well, I think there can be some of that. I think it depends on probably both the program and the kid, a little bit. But I think that there's been a lot made. For instance, getting back just briefly to what we talked about with Tyler Bizzle and playing, our senior year. I think that used to be very common. Now there are some more club teams that are offering 18U baseball. There's kids that are going to go play in the Metro League or the Car Shield League or the P3 League in St. Louis. All of those are great leagues. But I think the question is, like, if you're going to do that, or are you going to take the summer off and just train, as people say, I'm going to go to which seems to be more common with pitchers probably than anyone else. And I get it. You look at it. I tell our guys all the time coming in when they're seniors, listen, man, this is going to be a little different. Fall ball for us at the junior college level starts essentially the last week of August, and it's going to go to the end of October. Obviously dependent on, how many innings some guys have thrown and workload and things like that. But, we obviously want them fresh and ready to throw, because by the time that kid gets on campus, he's basically played his senior year of high school. He's played the summer of travel baseball or American Legion baseball. And then he's shown up in the fall, and now we're going to play for 10 or 11 weeks again in practice. And then we're going to take a few weeks off, and then we're going to start right into the spring. So that's a heavy workload in there. And to your point, I think, playing 40, 50, 60 games, I think we played I'd have to look. We probably played 40 something games last year. In 2019, when we went to the American Legion World Series, we played 52 games in the summer. Now, we certainly practiced a lot during that time. But we were also mindful of the idea of, like, look, we think we've got a pretty good group. There's got to be guys that can throw a lot of innings, and you're trying to stack 14, 15, 16 pitchers on a roster and things like that. So all that comes to the equation. I think you're trying to plan it out as best you can. To those guys' points, 3 of the best high school coaches you'll find anywhere. I certainly think the practice component is different. I think it can be challenging from a coaching perspective because it's incumbent on you to make sure the kids are as excited for practice day as they are for game day. If they're used to predominantly playing games, that can be a whole different animal. But I do know there's a ton of so many club baseball teams have a great off-season training program. The skill development is really not in question. I think we develop players, amateur players, as well as we ever have. I think obviously the expectation has changed a little bit. In terms of what's exciting game versus practice. Everybody loves to play and compete. I totally understand that, as do I. But there can be a little bit of an adjustment period, obviously, depending on the kid when they show up on campus that first fall.
Coach, last thing I want to hear, I appreciate your time. I really do. We're going to have
Sure.
to get you back on because I love the conversation. But you made mention, and I think this is key. And this is why we recently did a dad's coaching clinic for dad coaches at the youth level. Because, I coached my son, whatnot. I have some experience with things and whatnot. But do I know I would spend a lot of time talking to as many people, watching videos, I did a lot of diligence in understanding what is the practice and putting together a practice. I played sports. I was that way. I understood practice and how you go about it. But as you said, how are we getting the investment on that side of it? And I think that's key. I mean, there's very few of you out there doing that type of thing. Kent Getsy, like you said, I met. I like what Connor Spinagel's doing over at Sedalia, a young guy. He's working with that program.
No doubt.
He's got a couple of high school coaches that work with him in that program. And I think, that's what it's going to need to take to get some of these programs in moving in the right direction. Agreed?
Yeah. So that's, I don't know how much time you have allotted for that, but I have some thoughts on that as well. You mentioned Connor and Sedalia, who have always had a great program. There's a lot of community backing in Sedalia. Mm-hmm. Great facility. Now, you also hit on the fact that he has some high school coaches helping him, and I think that is something that has been really hard on American Legion baseball. Is the realistically the MSHA summer contact rule is incredibly punitive to baseball and softball. It is short-sighted. It is not based on doing what's best for kids. It's based on somebody had an idea that let's just give everybody 20 contact days and call it good, or 50 or whatever it is now.
Yeah.
The reality is that does not benefit kids. What they've essentially done at that point is you've outsourced a big chunk of your player development to club programs. And as my wife just added, you're going to price some families out of the development process. You need to get her on, is what you're really good. She's got thoughts.
I love it. There you go.
So yes. But she's exactly right. If you're having to outsource that because of your limitations on contact, and for years, like I said, I'll give credit where it's due. They have certainly opened up the possibility for 3 hours a week that you can work with your players in whatever that window happens to be for high school coaches. For years, there was no instruction allowed during those open periods, open gym, open field, whatever it happened to be. Okay. So you're outsourcing a ton of your development at that point to club and travel teams, of which they do an incredible job. Now, having said that, what happens if you're in a community where the majority of your kids can't afford to do that? They've been priced out. by the price of doing business. And again, I'm not accusing any club coach in a sport of price gouging anyone. I don't think that's the case. It costs money to do these things. And as I explained before, running a club is a full-time job in and of itself. So I'm not blaming anyone for that. But I think if Misha is serious about what's best for kids, then they need to be realistic about the fact that, you know what, there's no such thing. There's 7-on-7, but there's no such thing as club football in the summer. Okay. Obviously is club basketball. There's club baseball. Okay. The rules don't need to be the same for those. Just because they're all sports doesn't mean they're all the same thing. For years, I'll give you an example. Zach Weiss, who's the head coach of Crystal City High School, his father, Dave, was the coach of Windsor High School. He was the coach of Rock Memorial Legion in the summer. A ton of his kids would play for him in the summer. And granted, to be honest, there weren't the number of options they have now. There was Slava and some things like that. But, kids felt like they were getting better. Coach Weiss was invested in doing it because not only was he able to coach his Windsor High School kids and some Fox and Seckman kids and things like that, but it was a benefit to his program and the kids in the area. It was for the benefit of their community trying to go out and make kids better. Now, even if you had coaches that want to do that, they can't. You get 15, 20, 25, whatever they've made it at this point. That is not a realistic avenue for coaches to be able to coach their kids and get them better in the summer in that environment. You don't want to have 20 full contact football practices. Good idea. You probably shouldn't have 20 of those in the summer before the season starts. But I think if you really want an investment, from these communities, the high school coaches have to be involved in some capacity, whether that's coaching the team or helping out with the team. Brian Austin, for years, when he was the coach at Jackson High School, would help Mark Lewis in the summer whenever he could. Around their dead week and around all the million hoops you had to jump through to make sure that whoever at the Missouri State High School Activities Association didn't get in an uproar because some guy was volunteering his time to go try to help kids get better at baseball. Okay, so Brian would jump through all those hoops to do it. Until you make it easier for those coaches to get involved, for them to be able to look at it, and that's not American Legion Baseball's fault. That's the hand they've been dealt. But that is a huge issue that has really cut to the heart of American Legion Baseball. It's taken the high school coaches out of the equation, and it's really cut into the longevity of a lot of programs and coaches because you're not going to have guys that are not high school coaches who, one, have a job that allows them to get out and coach all summer. Two, have a wife and family that lets them go out and spend their summers in the ballpark when their child's not involved or not playing. And three, have a community that feels like they're invested year after year and not just 1 or 2 years, whenever they decide to have a program that time. So I think there's a lot that goes into it. I do think that American Legion Baseball still has a ton of things going for it. The American Legion World Series in Shelby, North Carolina is, for my money, outside of Omaha, Nebraska, has got to be the coolest event I've been to. I've been to Omaha as a fan. I played in the old Alex Box Stadium against LSU. I've been to Texas A&M to play against them on a weekend. I've seen some pretty cool environments, man. I think you'd be very hard pressed outside of Omaha to find some place that cares about it as much as they do. That's a huge selling point. Yeah. The question then is, okay, what else do we got? Okay, because that in and of itself, the All-Star Game is a cool idea. Those two things in and of themselves, while great ideas, are not going to be the driving factor that bring kids back to American Legion Baseball. The factor is, we're talking about just development and exposure. What can you offer in those areas? How do you make it more reasonable for community coaches, high school coaches to be involved in that? How do you make it more attractive to kids to choose that option? Right now, like I said, club teams have a tremendous advantage in both what they can offer from a development standpoint and what they can offer from an exposure standpoint. Now, that did not happen overnight. It was a process for sure. Okay. American Legion Baseball is never going to eliminate club baseball, nor should it. Like I said earlier, there's plenty of kids for why that is exactly what they need to be doing this summer. Having said that, there's also a lot of kids, like we talked about, that would benefit from playing American Legion Baseball. So where do we go? How do we get it to a point where they feel like it's a worthy investment of their summer?
That's perfect. I agree 100%. And I think that's the thing. just as we've always said, there's a place for everybody to play and a place for those things. But that's the conversation at this point. And I do believe the guys at the top, I know this from Tom Rhodes because we've had these conversations. I think he's committed to doing that. He's passionate about it. He's a sportsman anyway. This guy's he's a captain of a tennis team on a USTA tennis team. He's a competitor. He loves that stuff, and I think it's going in the right direction. And those are the things that we need to put out and talk about more. Just the things you put out there. Those are the conversations that have to be had.
I would certainly agree, but while we're on while we're still on the topic, I do think, specifically right now at the state level and also at the national level, the powers that be, the administration, American Legion Baseball, need to be more open to input from people outside of the board of directors or people that are, and I understand there's a lot of tradition with American Legion Baseball, a lot of tradition with the American Legion Post. It can't be an echo chamber where everyone thinks that they're only going to listen to the 6 guys on their advisory board. You're going to have to get some people, some outside opinions that can give you a realistic representation of what's going well, what's not going well, and what needs to be fixed. I think Tom's a good guy. I think Tom has everyone's best interest at heart. I do think that there would be a benefit to perhaps bringing in some people just to have a conversation. I'm not talking about turning over the board or decisions to anybody. I'm talking about having real conversations with college coaches about, hey, what do we need to do better? Because I think, we're missing the forest for the trees just a little bit here, right? Like, then again, if you want the program to grow and be attractive, which seems to be the goal, you have to make it attractive to a larger number of players. If you want more players to continually pursue American Legion Baseball at the expense of other means of summer baseball, you're going to need to draw, again, that exposure and development part of it. So I think there are solutions that are out there. I think that's a conversation that needs to be had amongst not just the people who are on the board that makes the decisions, but amongst people that can give this other perspectives.
I agree. I concur with that. Coach, I appreciate your time. Really do.
I really appreciate you guys having me. I know we got to talk about a variety of different things. Again, I don't want to sound pessimistic. American Legion Baseball has been great to me. I think there's, one of the misconceptions. I think you ask about, practice time and Legion thing. And I think so many of the skills that make you a successful high school or American Legion or travel ball coach translate to almost any level. You talked about coaching yourself. I think ultimately the goal should be for every level, college, high school, travel on down. Let's do what's best for the player. I think too often it gets into, the travel coach doesn't trust the high school coach and then, doesn't think he knows what he's talking about. That's not true. We have some of the best high school coaches in the country right here in St. Louis. So the high school coach thinks the travel coach is just out to make money, which is not true. There's so many good travel ball coaches in St. Louis, or the college coach because he volunteered at a small college for 3 years, thinks he's Skip Bertman or something like that and can't learn anything from those guys. None of that's true. I mean, there's great coaches at every single level. So much of what's successful at the younger levels translates all the way up. Are you organized? Do you care about the kids? Are you out there making an investment in them getting better? I think a lot of what we talked about, there's room to work together on all of those levels and to make sure the kids get the best experience they can. They make the most out of their career.
There you go. Love that. Coach, come back and see us. We'll get you back on here. We'll talk a little college baseball next time around. That'd be
sure. Anytime.
Interesting too. I'd love to get your perspective on recruiting because it's always a big topic.
No doubt. Anytime, man. I appreciate you guys having me.
Folks, if you enjoyed that, please, again, our subscribe button right there, the dinger next to it, hit that dinger because, chicks dig the long ball, right?
Well, the greatest baseball commercial of all time, no doubt.
And that's what gets you all your notifications. Go check out our merch store that keeps us going here. It's at youthbaseballmidwest.com. It's right there on the screen. We appreciate everything Thanks to our sponsors, Game 7 Baseball, Prime Sports Midwest, for all they do for us. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. Have a great day in the Lord. All you pitchers, keep throwing strikes. And hitters, Coach, got some advice for the hitters?
Yeah, that's again probably a long time. But pitchers keep throwing strikes, hitters keep swinging at strikes is good advice if we're going to keep it succinct there.
There you go. I like it. We'll see y'all next time.